Thanks to Brilliant.org for sponsoring this video.
I'm not the man you thought I was. I'm not that guy. I never could be. But that's the point.
Hey, welcome back Screen Crush, I'm Ryan Airy, and spoilers are ahead for the first episode of Secret Invasion. So in the first 10 minutes of the episode, it's revealed that our old friend from Captain America Civil War and the Black Panther films, Everett K Ross, is a Skrull. Now, the question is, how long has he been a Skrull? Was it just for this series, or has it been
the whole time
Now, at first, I didn't think that the MCU would waste an actor like Martin Freeman on such a quick death, and it seems like he was being set up for a Wakanda Forever sequel. But I went back through the MCU, and it actually would have made total sense for Ross to have been a Skrull since day one. And if he was, that means that there has been a faction of Skrulls working against the human race for years, and this Skrull faction would have caused the superhero civil war, Thanos' snap, and the ultimate end of the Avengers. So let's take a trip back through the history of the MCU to answer the question of when Ross became a Skrull and how long have the Skrulls been evil. I've got some theories here that are going to blow your mind. First, let's talk about what the Skrulls actually want here and what exactly they're trying to do. So in the comics, the Skrulls have been villains ever since their first appearance in Fantastic Four issue 2, a comic book that ends with the Skrulls being forced to turn into cows, and then years later some people eat the meat from those cows and get the superpowers to see through Skrull disguises.
What's that got to do with this?
Nothing. It's just a fun, weird detail that I love pointing out at parties.
Oh, you go to parties?
There was one time. So anyways, the Skrulls were always bad guys in the comics, but in the MCU, they pulled the old movie villain switcheroo on us, and Captain Marvel revealed that the Skrulls were merely refugees trying to escape a Holocaust at the hands of the Kree. So for 30 years, the Skrulls have been searching for a new planet, and even though Carol had a ship that could travel further and faster than any ever created before, the Skrulls still never found a suitable homeworld. So now, some Skrulls are thinking that they should just take over the Earth. Now in the comics, something similar happens. Galactus eats the Skrull throne world, Skrullos, so the Skrulls begin to believe in a religious prophecy that after their world is destroyed, they will come to inhabit a blue world, which they take to mean Earth. Now the question for this video is, how long have some Skrulls been plotting to take over the planet? In the show, they specify that this is an attitude that has evolved more post-blip, after Fury disappeared and Danvers went off to help other planets.
She did what now?
You remember, she went off to help like all the planets that didn't have Avengers.
I'm covering a lot of territory. The things that are happening on Earth are happening everywhere.
But I think we're going to find out that some Skrulls have had their eyes on Earth for a very long time. They see how messy and violent humans are, how weak our physiology is, how short we live, and they know that Skrulls would do a better job running Earth than we do. I mean, we poison our skies instead of appreciating the world that we have. And that is why I think it's going to be revealed that certain MCU characters, like Ross and probably Rhodey, have been Skrulls all along.
What?
Hey person, are you ever worried that they'll replace you with an AI?
Welcome back, Screen Crushers.
No, not really. But I am keeping up with AI, and we even use it here at the store for research, graphics editing, and a lot more. See, I'm not afraid AI is going to take my job, but it is going to make my job easier.
Wow, how'd you learn so much about AI?
Well, Doug, to understand AI, I had to learn about the core concepts behind it, things like AI, neural networking, and machine learning. And the best place to learn things like this is Brilliant.org. They're the sponsor of this video. Brilliant is a great way to challenge myself to learn something new every day, like science, computer science, or math.
Or why bother? You're not even in school, are you?
Well, Doug, because learning math is hard, but if I can learn math, then I can learn anything, and learning is a lifelong skill. See, I was a terrible math and science student in school. Maybe you were too. A lot of those subjects were really difficult at that age, but Brilliant is great for understanding the world around us and concepts that I never thought I could learn. I especially love logic problems and nonlinear thinking puzzles, and they're built more like games than boring classroom lessons. I mean, look, to learn anything, you have to do it. Interactive learning is proven to be 6 times more effective than passive learning, like just watching videos. So Brilliant uses these visual lessons that make them a fun part of my morning routine. These are short lessons that are built for busy people like me, although it is easy to get sucked into a really good lesson. I'm usually on for like 10 to 15 minutes a day.
Well, geez, how does it even work?
Well, you interact with charts and graphs, or robots and matchsticks, to teach you these mathematical and logic concepts. I highly recommend the logic puzzles. They're fun, and they've built analytical skills that help me work out problems at work.
Oh, so you're a genius now?
I wouldn't go that far, but with Brilliant, you learn how to think better. So to try everything Brilliant has to offer for free for a full 30 days, visit brilliant.org/screencrush or click the link in the description. The first 200 of you will get 20% off Brilliant's annual premium subscription. Now, back to what I was saying. Alright, so let's go back through the history of Everett K Ross in the MCU and see if we can figure out exactly when he was replaced with a Skrull. Let's start with Captain America Civil War. I love this movie. I think it's pretty much perfect, but the internet has criticized how for Zemo's plan to work, a lot of events had had to line up like just perfectly. A lot of these events were not even under Zemo's control. For instance, Bucky had to be arrested at just the right time, and Zemo had no control over when that would happen. But there are other events in this movie that make a lot more sense if there was somebody else working besides Zemo. Somebody who wanted to make the heroes fight one another. A few years ago, Nando V Movies put out a great video about how Sharon Carter could have been Zemo's secret accomplice. After all, she does tell Steve where to find Bucky, and she brings Sam and Steve their gear. But Agent Ross was actually in a better position to sow discord among the heroes. So, when we first meet Ross, he is a commander of the CIA Deputy Task Force, a task force that I assume was to bring in Bucky because he was just framed for bombing the embassy. Remember, this was a time when the governments of the world were cracking down on superhumans. Secretary of State Thaddeus Thunderbolt Ross had just spearheaded the adoption of the Sokovia Accords, which were meant to rein in enhanced individuals so they would effectively be reporting straight to the governments of the world. So Everett Ross is part of this initiative to keep heroes in check. His deputy task force is meant to apprehend enhanced individuals. There's one point where he even tells Cap about Bucky, and he says,
"Same thing that ought to happen to you. Psychological evaluation and extradition."
Ross is talking to Captain America like that. Captain America, a war hero. So if he can tell Captain America, you need a psych eval, clearly he has no love for superhumans. Now, let's say that you're the Skrulls and you want to take over the Earth. The number one obstacle are the superheroes. So Skrull Ross joins a task force that is meant to neutralize superhuman threats. And then Ross takes away Sam and Steve's weapons and confines them to an office. And he even specifies he thinks it should be a cell and not just an office.
You'll be provided with an office instead of a cell. Now do me a favor, stay in it.
Now, let's suppose just for a second that Skrull Ross was working with Zemo. I don't know how, they know each other from their intel days, it doesn't matter. See, Zemo poses as the psychiatrist with an appointment to see Bucky, and this appointment just happens to coincide with an EMP charge being delivered to a power station.
Very well timed.
Yes, it was. Now remember, Ross was the one who insisted on a psych evaluation. So I could see him calling in Zemo at the exact time that Zemo needed to be near Bucky to activate his code words, right when the EMP was detonated. Zemo had to read the words at the precise moment of the power outage.
But couldn't he have just timed the delivery perfectly for that moment?
Sure, that could have happened. Now, let's go to Nando's theory that Sharon Carter was a Zemo plant. After her heel turn in Falcon and the Winter Soldier, this theory actually seems very likely. She and Ross both work for the CIA. So, in Nando's video, he points out all the different ways Sharon nudges Steve into a battle with Tony Stark. For instance, no one on Steve's side takes a strong ideological viewpoint in the conflict. Like Tony's side, all believe that the heroes needed to be kept in check.
Conflict breeds catastrophe. Oversight is not an idea that can be dismissed out of hand.
But Steve's team will do whatever he does because he's Captain America.
I do what he does, just slower.
But Sharon actually convinces Steve to stand by his convictions and to not sign the Accords.
Even if the whole world is telling you to move, it is your duty to plant yourself like a tree, look them in the eye and say no.
So, if Sharon was a Zemo plant, then I could see Ross knowingly let her find out key information. For instance, like how Steve could find Bucky at the right moment so he would be arrested.
Wait, what do you mean the moment he was arrested? Explain that.
Okay, so in order for Zemo's plan to work, Bucky had to have been arrested, right? And then brought into custody on the day that he was being called in to perform a psych evaluation and on the same day when the EMP charge is being delivered. It's too many variables for Zemo to have controlled alone. So in this case, it's Sharon Carter who tells Steve where to find Bucky. And the only reason Bucky was even captured alive is because Steve was there to defend him against the police. Ross could have helped Sharon in other ways. He could have let Sharon into the locker where they kept Steve's weapons. Without these weapons, the airport fight in Civil War wouldn't have gone very far. And remember, this was the match that lit off the superhero civil war that culminates with the fight with Iron Man at the end of the movie. And also, when Bucky's activated and he's going on a rampage through the building, guess who tells Steve where to find him?
Sublevel 5 East Wing.
Hell, maybe we'll find out that Sharon Carter was a Skrull and Zemo was not even aware that he had help. The point is that Ross was in a key position to feed information to Sharon Carter or to help Zemo's plan along the way. If he is a Skrull operative, then it would have been his goal to sow discord between the heroes. So he's in a unique position to help kickstart the superhero civil war. So Ross could have been one of many Skrull operatives in the CIA who were put in place to suppress superhuman activity. But then, in Captain America Civil War, he accidentally discovers the Motherlode. The Prince of Wakanda dresses up as a giant cat with vibranium claws. The Wakandans have kept their technology hidden from the rest of the world for centuries, but they couldn't hide their tech from Thanos' forces. So we can assume that extraterrestrials, like the Skrulls, have the ability to detect Wakanda's true technology. After the Prince of Wakanda shows up with superpowers, the Skrulls would have scanned Wakanda and found out they have all this advanced tech that they've kept hidden from the rest of the world. And this is when Skrull Ross would have gotten a new mission to get close to the Kingdom of Wakanda and learn about their technology. Ross's last monologue in the movie is him talking to Zemo.
You step out of line, you deal with me. Please, step out of line.
Now, Zemo is a prisoner that the Wakandans have a strong interest in because he killed their king. Zemo staying in Ross's custody means that he will always have a link to Wakanda. He even covers up that T'Challa is a superhuman in a vibranium catsuit just so he can stay on the new king's good side. And then, in Black Panther, Ross is setting up a sting operation to capture Ulysses Klaue. Klaue is an arms dealer who is known to have stolen vibranium from Wakanda. So Ross is placing himself in the proximity of a criminal who he knows the Wakandans are going to come after. Again, this places him near the Wakandans. And side note, just from this scene, I really wish that Klaue's mixtape was real.
Well, that is quite the entourage. You got a mixtape coming out?
Yeah, I'll send you the SoundCloud link if you like.
When T'Challa shows up at the casino, Ross tells him,
Didn't I keep it under wraps that the king of a third world country runs around in a bulletproof catsuit?
I always thought it was a bit strange that Ross didn't report T'Challa being the Black Panther.
Wouldn't it be because of, like, I don't know, diplomatic immunity?
Maybe, but in Civil War, Ross was a hardliner. He wanted to lock up Captain America. And as far as he knew, Wakanda was a poor nation, not a global superpower. The Sokovia Accords would have likely superseded any diplomatic immunity because their aim was to bring all enhanced individuals to heel. T'Challa did hand over Zemo to the authorities, and Ross makes it sound like this is why he kept T'Challa's powers quiet. But maybe that's not the case. Maybe, again, Ross's goal was to do reconnaissance, to find out more information on Wakanda, which he does when he insists on being the person who interrogates Klaue.
No, look, I like you a lot, but he's in my custody now.
And if you really want to get to like a full-blown conspiracy theory, it's weird that they take Klaue to this lightly guarded CIA safe house instead of the embassy or a prison under heavy guard. Instead, they bring him to a hidden location with a prison cell wall facing an outside alley. At this point, it makes me think that Ross could have leaked the location to Killmonger. After all, Killmonger used to work for the CIA.
His unit used to work with the CIA to destabilize foreign countries.
So Ross uses back channels to feed Killmonger info. Now this implies that Ross would have known Killmonger was Wakandan and would want to return to his homeland, which I guess implies that he manipulated the whole conflict in Black Panther. So then Klaue tells Ross the truth about Wakanda.
It's not just the metal. They sew it into their clothes. It powers their city, their tech, their weapons.
Leading Ross to confront T'Challa.
Your father told the UN that Klaue stole all the vibranium you had, but now he's telling me you have more?
And then, when Killmonger attacks, Ross shields Nakia from bullets and takes one in the spine. But what really happened here? Nakia is a seasoned spy. She had plenty of time to duck away from this gunfire. If she was about to get shot, I think she would have gotten down. She should not need Ross to knock her out of the way of the gunfire, unless the gunfire was never going to hit Nakia. Ross grabs her, and then, like using his enhanced Skrull senses, pushes himself into gunfire to get injured. He reasons that the Wakandans would use their tech to save his life because he just saved Nakia, and then he hits the jackpot when they bring him to their nation.
Okay, is this Wakanda?
No, it's Kansas.
Now, through the rest of the movie, Ross is mostly a silent observer. He asks Shuri questions about her tech.
These train things, that's magnetic levitation, right?
Obviously.
And he quickly gives the good guys intel on Killmonger.
Started calling him Killmonger. He joined a JSOC ghost unit. Now these guys are serious. They will drop off the grid so they can commit assassinations and take down governments.
And in the climax of the movie, he fights to keep Wakanda from being ruled by a violent extremist. If Killmonger had spread Wakandan weapons across the world, then the planet would have been harder to take over if the Skrulls decided ever to act.
But in this show, Skrulls are trying to destabilize world governments. So wouldn't Skrull Ross want to start World War III with Wakanda?
No. His mission is still reconnaissance, to get close to the Wakandans. Plus, World War III would poison the Earth with atomic radiation. Well, actually, then again, maybe that's what the Skrulls want. Maybe they want World War III. I mean, we do see that the Skrulls at the abandoned nuclear power plants aren't affected by radiation, so maybe they just want humans to blow each other up by the end of this series. And just a couple of final notes on the movie Black Panther. Ross may have been an Air Force pilot, but he does get the hang of flying a Wakandan craft very quickly. Maybe that's because he's had experience flying advanced ships before. And by the end of the movie, he has chosen to not reveal the Wakandans to his superiors. He says this is out of loyalty to Shuri for saving his life. But this guy works for the CIA. He commits treason the moment he decides to keep quiet about the largest threat to American security, well, it's the MCU, so I guess since Ultron.
Yeah, I don't know, man. It seems like you're like cherry-picking moments from old movies and retconning Skrull Ross into them.
Yes, I am going back through the MCU and looking at it through a different lens. Now, I don't think that when Ross was in Captain America Civil War that the Russo brothers were thinking, this guy's gonna be a Skrull. But the MCU has brilliantly retconned many movies to make them resonate in future projects, like how Loki's scepter was not originally meant to be the Mind Stone.
Wait, it wasn't?
No, if it was originally the Mind Stone, then why would Thanos give somebody else an Infinity Stone?
Oh yeah.
But look, even if you say that I'm reaching with all this, I'll accept that. But I 100% think that Ross is a Skrull in Black Panther Wakanda Forever. It's the only way his actions in that movie make any sense. So, in Wakanda Forever, we also find out that Ross was married to the director of the CIA, Val. This also puts a point in the column for him being a Skrull for a long time, because what better way to infiltrate America's intelligence structure than to marry into it? But that aside, let's look at Ross's actions in Wakanda Forever. First of all, I don't think that the Skrulls had any idea that Talokan exists. I do think that they want vibranium, and they want lots of it. Vibranium is a metal that seems to be unique to Earth, and it would be key to making the Skrulls a dominant power in the universe once again. So, because the Skrulls want vibranium, Skrull Ross knows about Riri inventing a vibranium detector. But isn't it interesting that he doesn't immediately share this information with the Wakandans? If he really is looking out for Wakandan self-interest, wouldn't he have immediately told them, hey, America now has a vibranium detector? But he keeps that information to himself, because it's actually the Skrulls who want the vibranium detector. Because look, when Shuri and Okoye confront him about the existence of a vibranium detector, he immediately shifts his loyalties. He doesn't say, classified, sorry, it's my job, I could go to prison. He caves right away and tells them everything he knows. Do you know why?
Why?
Because the original plan was for the Skrulls within the CIA to use the vibranium detector to find vibranium for themselves. But then, the boat was attacked by Talokan. Now, Ross does not know that it was Namor or Talokan. No one, not even the Skrulls, know Talokan exists. Ross thinks it was the Wakandans.
So it was you guys in the Atlantic.
So, as soon as the Wakandans have the vibranium detector, they again become the Skrulls' only access to the metal. So Ross crawls back into bed with Wakanda. I mean, it is startling how fast Ross sells out his entire country and commits treason. He says it's because,
I owe Shuri my life.
my guy, you repaid that debt when you fought to keep her brother on the throne. Think about it. He tips off a foreign power with highly classified information.
There are agents who have been sentenced to death for less than I'm about to give you now.
This is like if you gave nuclear codes to Russia at the height of the Cold War. Not only that, but he doesn't share any information with his own government. He just says,
My sources are telling me that there's someone else out there.
And he uses Wakandan technology to have clandestine communications with a foreign power. And then he keeps the CIA from looking too closely at the Wakandans and even gives them a cover story.
The Wakandans were recruiting her as part of their outreach program, nothing more.
And then the Secretary of State tells Ross about a highly classified executive decision about a major foreign policy change.
The president wants to take offensive action against Wakanda.
And Ross immediately tells Wakanda. So at this point, he is no longer a CIA operative. He is a lone wolf, a deep operative for Wakanda, which makes no sense. Maybe we're meant to think that he's a good guy who sees that the Wakandans are actually good people in the global stage, but this guy is supposed to be career CIA. It makes way more sense if he was a Skrull agent trying to gain the trust of the most powerful nation on Earth. And if the Skrulls really did decide to infiltrate the Earth post-blip, Wakanda Forever takes place within that timeline. And while we're on this topic, if Val was bugging Ross's beads the whole time, it's pretty stupid that they let him know about this regime change policy. Then again, maybe she didn't know the Secretary of State was going to drop that bomb on them. She does look pretty surprised. So, the movie ends with Skrull Ross apparently achieving his goal. He has won over the Wakandans and they even spring him from prison. So, when we see Ross in this first episode, he's off the grid, working with Maria Hill. Later in the episode, Rhodey confirms that Hill and Fury are both essentially AWOL.
Given the fact that I could reach neither Agent Hill nor Agent Fury, they are effectively AWOL.
Meaning that Ross is AWOL too. He does not work for a government agency. And isn't it interesting that as soon as Ross gets out of jail, the first thing he does is start working with a group of off-the-grid agents whose mission is to root out Skrulls.
Yeah, but isn't it also possible that he was just a Skrull just for this TV show?
Totally, but that would be such a waste. The comic book Secret Invasion was so much fun because we found out that certain heroes had been Skrulls for years. Elektra, Spider-Woman, and founding Avenger Hank Pym. So this made us look back at like a few years of comics and stories and realize, oh, that's why they were acting so weirdly. It was planned out thoroughly in advance, and so is the MCU. In the comics, we also knew that Hank Pym was a Skrull for most of the event, so it was like this ticking clock all the way through the series. It would have been really nice if we had that with Ross, like if he stuck around for a few episodes while we knew that he was a mole or a secret Skrull. This is like the drawback of doing this story in the MCU as a series. The comics created this massive crossover where every single title was affected and nobody knew who to trust. But in the MCU, it's harder to span a story across Ross movies and TV shows, so they're keeping it as like a tight spy thriller. Now that probably makes for better storytelling, but it means we won't get to see Skrulls pretending to be superheroes. Now with Ross, I don't think it's likely that they're going to throw away all his character development we've seen over the years, so maybe he's only been recently impersonated. And then like in Black Panther 3, we'd have a Gamora situation where Martin Freeman plays a version of the character who's never met the Wakandans before. But I really hope this show does dive deep into this and make characters that we love into real, evil Skrulls. It's the only way to make this premise work. If the show doesn't make us go back and question everything we know about the MCU, then it's wasted one of the greatest all-time Marvel comic stories. But what do you guys think? How long has Ross been a Skrull? Who else is a Skrull? Are you liking Secret Invasion so far? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below or at me on Twitter. And if it's your first time here, please subscribe, smash that bell for alerts. For Screen Crush, I'm Ryan Airy.